Hello, and welcome to our Syxsense Patch Tuesday webinar. Today, we have industry expert Rob Brown to give us an inside look at the newest Patch Tuesday release. If you have any questions, please add those to the chat, and Rob will reach out after to answer them. With that, I'll pass it over to Rob.
Thank you, Kristen. A very warm welcome to everybody joining us today. It is the final Patch Tuesday of the year. It's been a long year. We've actually had so many vulnerabilities this year that I think it's probably matching that of 2022, which is kind of the year I think we saw the most vulnerabilities released in an entire period. And although we've had some months this year where the number of patches have been slightly less, and some months where we've had a crazy number of patches, I think the kind of risk throughout the year has been rather consistent. So very warm welcome joining everybody, both on the live webinar and recording as well. First thing we're going to do is to look at the life cycle. Now, this is one of the probably New Year's resolutions for your IT department, is to look at what operating systems are coming end of life next year, in getting ready for those, because these dates will creep up very, very quickly. Now, Windows 10 21H2, all editions, actually already went end of life this year. Windows 10, though, even with the latest feature update, will go end of life on the 14th of October 2025. Now, that does mean you need to really start planning for the migration to Windows 11. And one of the biggest challenges I think you might find, as we are learning with our managed services customers, is that the operating system and the management of the operating system is a little bit different. The look and feel, the UI change is enough to actually maybe require some of your users to have some kind of basic step-by-step instructions on how to log in, how to find their applications, where the tools are, etc., because they are in some different places, as well as the traditional start menu isn't where it used to be, or you can now configure it to be where it was. You have some more options around the start menu, which I think will be best to very slowly educate the users of the new operating system, because it's super important that you get to the next version. Once these operating systems go end of life, you will no longer be able to receive feature updates or patches for them. So it's really important that you already have made plans, or if you haven't made plans, plan it in the new year. Windows Server 2012 actually is officially end of life, but there is something called an ESU, which is an extension license. We're actually going to go into year 2 in February of next year. The entire operating system goes end of life on the 10th of October 2026. So you do have quite a way to go. The only thing about those extensions is you need to purchase those licenses every year. So every year, for all of the servers that you want to continue patching, you need to purchase those licenses for every year. So you can't just decide next year to go ahead and patch Windows Server 2012. You have to purchase year 1 and then purchase year 2. So it is something that you need to purchase every single year that you want to continue patching. Windows 11 Home and Pro is now officially end of life for 22H2. You should be upgrading to at least 23H2 for Windows 11 Home and Pro. For Windows 11 Enterprise, 22H2 is going end of life also in October of next year. And we do recommend that you go to at least 23H2 for 6 months. Although 24H2 is now available, give it a couple of months. I think that's the best recommendation that we can provide for the feature update, is just allow that feature update anywhere between 4 and 6 months to fully bed in, get a couple of patches under its belt, and then you can start rolling that out to your enterprise. But it is very, very important that you have a plan for the migration. Not all hardware is in fact compatible between Windows 10 and 11 as well. Just to be on the safe side, make sure your hardware is compatible first before you make any plans. Okay, this is super interesting, and I started to smile when I saw this. A couple of days ago, we had an announcement that Microsoft had seen some articles around an NTLM 0-day allow credential theft vulnerability. And the reason I smiled is because this is truly a 0-day. You may be aware of news outlets and bulletins and sort of the RSS feeds that indicate that there is something called an O-day or a 0-day. It's the same thing, where they talk about Microsoft or the third-party vendors releasing a 0-day vulnerability. Now, once they release, sorry, a 0-day patch. Now, once they release the patch, it's no longer a 0-day. It could either be a weaponized or a public aware vulnerability. This is truly a 0-day. And actually, there's conflicting information around this, but basically this bug allows an attacker to collect a user's NTLM credentials simply by getting the user to view malicious files on the internet from a local share or from a USB disk, sorry, a USB stick. Now, if you happen to find a USB stick by the car in the parking lot, throw it away. Apparently, that's actually quite popular. Some very expensive USB sticks that are being left by executives' cars, and you look down, you pick it, you think, awesome, that's a USB stick for free. Pop it into your laptop, and suddenly you're getting hit with an attack. All it takes is for you to look at the payload in order to become compromised, and effectively your credentials can be stolen and used in an active attack. Now, Microsoft hasn't provided a patch yet. What they have done is they've provided an update to quite an old article online, which is what they call extended protection for authentication guidance. So there's a website from 2021 that details the EPA that shows how you can secure LDAP, Active Directory, and specifically Exchange. And what they're saying is this extended protection for authentication guidance specifically for Exchange should be used because of the particular role that Exchange uses in the NTLM threat landscape. Now, there hasn't been any suggestion that NTLM version 2 is vulnerable to this yet, but I would highly recommend going and taking a look at that guidance to make sure that the NTLM security and the policies that you're applying at the server side are being used just to protect yourself from this particular threat. There is no patch for this yet, just to repeat, there is no patch. All you can do is follow that guidance. The reason I said it was interesting and rather sort of, as we say, rather canny, is that they said that they're going to produce a patch in April 2025, and I don't know if that's an April Fool's joke or not, but I imagine if this does actually become weaponized, they will release an update for it. So please, if you're concerned, go ahead and check that guidance and apply the recommendations. But do keep your eye out on our website. We will be announcing if there is a out-of-band patch for this 0-day vulnerability whenever it's released. Now, Patch Tuesday gave us 70 new fixes. 16 of those were severity critical. That's actually really high compared to what we've been receiving throughout this year. We have 54 important or high severity vulnerabilities also. Now, 5 of the 70 are more likely to be weaponized. 1 is weaponized, and the same is public aware as well. So you kind of got a double whammy there. It's both weaponized and public aware. And we're going to talk about what that means in a second. And we have 2 that are jump points. Now, the recommendations that I suggest during the onboarding of our customers is that you create a patch risk profile or vulnerability risk profile if you're doing vulnerability management that covers the risks you're not prepared to take. And some of the slides you're about to see could help you in your recommendations of the vulnerabilities that you should deploy. Not everyone is able to deploy all of the updates, especially across distributed organizations. And therefore, you may need to start building layers of selection into your process. So you don't deploy them all at once. You deploy group 1, which is the most severe, group 2, group 3, group 4, throughout your environment over a period of days or even weeks, but focusing first on the most serious. So in this case, anything that is more likely to be weaponized or anything that is weaponized and or public aware should be prioritized. And also any vulnerability that has a jump point. A jump point is where a technology can be exposed and broken out of into another tech stack. So it might be that you break it out of your Microsoft Edge browser into the operating system. So you're effectively breaking out of the Edge browser into Windows, and from there you can continue your attack. You've escaped effectively from the sandbox. If you're familiar with CVSS, this is called a scope change. So it's very, very important that you keep an eye on that, and we'd like to record those for you as well. Now, we also can use bug type. Now, the bug type depends on how and what impact you're going to have if you become exploited. The most serious of those bug types are called remote code execution vulnerabilities, and we have 30 of those fixed in this Patch Tuesday release. A remote code execution vulnerability is a class of cyber attack in which attackers remotely execute commands to place malware or other code on your computer or network, and that can impact both the device and the network as well. Elevation of privilege is number 2. We have 27 of those. That's the second most serious vulnerability. That's where a threat actor gains access to an employee's account, bypasses the proper authorization channel, and successfully grants themselves access to data they're not supposed to have. Information disclosure vulnerability was 7 of those. That's when a program unintentionally reveals sensitive information. Denial of service, that's just simply an attack to shut it down or to make the device inaccessible, or just to literally strangle the network. We have 5 of those, and we have 3 spoofing vulnerabilities, which is an act of disguise. So again, some of these vulnerabilities don't have the highest severity, but if you have all of this information, you can build out your patch risk profile and actually choose the vulnerabilities that matter the most to protect your organization, especially coming into the Christmas period where emails are going to be sent, going around, access to social media. It will inevitably include links. And if you do end up accessing one of those links, you need to be prepared to protect your environment in case of that eventuality. We also have within Syxsense what we call our Syx score. Now, a Syx score is built up of 6 factors. So this is also a patch risk profile, which you can get from the Syxsense console. I highly recommend you schedule the Syx score report. So there's a top X Syx score patches report, and that can give you on a daily basis your top vulnerabilities or top patches which are still in your organization and need to be deployed. And it's based on vendor severity. Vendor severity is typically from critical, and it goes from critical to high, medium, low, and NA, critical being the very worst and NA being the least. CVSS is a score out of 10. It's a comprehensive calculator that is determined on lots of different inputs, and basically you can determine the severity of a vulnerability based on those inputs, and the score out of 10 being the worst to 0 being the least gives you an extra layer of validation of the severity of a threat. Not all vendors will call their critical vulnerability compared to a CVSS score the same. Some Google updates this year that have a weaponized threat end up getting released as an NA severity, CVSS score 9.8. They don't always match. So if you combine the two and use the highest from either severity, vendor severity or score, you have a better way of seeing the true severity of a threat. The second is the state of the threat. Weaponized threats mean that it is under active attack through the vendor and through our Microsoft partners, partnership and our antivirus partners. We're able to collect certain intelligence that allow us to record when a particular CVE, which is the reference of a vulnerability, is being used in an active attack, and it triggers a weaponized status. So once something becomes weaponized, which can be any severity of vulnerability, it is very important that you are aware of those changes and take proactive steps in the remediation of those kind of threats. Public aware doesn't mean that you're learning about the vulnerability on this webinar. It means somebody has produced an article or a YouTube channel video that is showing you how to exploit it. Lots of white hat hackers are doing this to help educate IT managers in how to protect your organization. Once something becomes public aware and the exact blueprint is available, there is potential for it to become weaponized. Not all public aware vulnerabilities actually do become weaponized. Some public aware vulnerabilities are so complex to weaponize, they never actually do. However, if you go back to those kind of groups I mentioned, maybe public aware vulnerabilities that aren't so severe, that are not weaponized, should be deployed in maybe groups 3 or groups 4, just in case it does. Be a little bit proactive so that those public aware threats get dealt with. Now we have a balance, so we have countermeasures. A balance, a countermeasure is basically a mitigation or a workaround. Potentially you have a next generation antivirus. Maybe you have the ability to change a registry key or modify a service condition or a permission on a device. If you can deploy those countermeasures, then maybe, perhaps, you can deploy those countermeasures much faster than a 1.5 gigabyte patch. And deploying those countermeasures give you the ability to have time, especially over Christmas, where, especially here in the UK, we have a lot of customers using a change freeze. So they don't want any patches to go out to critical systems unless they are absolutely essential. In the event of a countermeasure, we might change the registry key or we might change the service condition, and that actually mitigates the need to deploy the patch. And we'll wait till January. One thing to note, please, if you're deploying those countermeasures, please make sure you read the instructions from the vendor. Sometimes the vendor will say, if you've applied the countermeasures, reverse the countermeasures when you deploy the patch. Don't just leave these registry keys that are no longer needed there. That could actually be used in a future attack. So if you have deployed registry keys, go and remove them when you're done. And of course, everything is balanced on your exposure. So all of these vulnerabilities that are super serious, weaponized with the greatest of risk, is on 2 or 3 machines. It's probably less important to you than something that was equally as severe, maybe not yet weaponized, but is public aware on 95% of your environment. Maybe that's the one that you should use to deploy first. That's the one that probably holds the greatest risk to your organization. Pop that into your solution and start proactively deploying those updates. If you're not using Syxsense, I'm actually going to show you how to help make that decision through the website. So even if you're not a Syxsense customer, you can still use the patch risk profile here on the screen to actually help prioritize your patches. Now, we actually do have on our Syxsense website, which I'll bring across here. Syxsense, I haven't stopped smiling. We're absolutely delighted that we've been acquired by Absolute Security. It's a fantastic platform to which you are now able to manage everything from the tin of a device to the drivers to the operating system to the patches on the operating system, third-party updates as well, all the way up to network access. So you can pretty much do everything from tin to zero trust. If you go over to the resources section on the top here, you can actually go to our news page where you'll find all of our webinars that we're releasing and all of our notes. Also over on the left-hand side, you've got ebooks and guides. We're always updating our test sheets on our best recommendations for patch management. Even if you're not a Syxsense customer, go ahead and download those guides and ebooks. It will really help to protect your organization. And also we have loads of other webinars running throughout the year, just recommending and prioritizing vulnerabilities for remediation. We do have a link directly to the Patch Tuesday webinar as well, which we can email to you if you subscribe. So you don't have to always go to the website. We can send you a link. It pops in your mailbox the day of Patch Tuesday, and you can start planning ahead of this webinar. We love questions. We get so many questions, we just simply can't answer them on the call. So if you do have any questions, when you see the link, the article, send those questions in and we'll actually privately respond to you. And if I can, I will as well. Now, we had 70 bug fixes, as I said earlier on. We're going to talk about 3 really critical ones, and actually I'm going to show you the rest as well. So as we go down, we are looking at quite a lot of vulnerabilities for this month. Not as many as last month, which is actually good because I think you'll want to know which vulnerabilities to prioritize, especially if you're in a change chill or a change freeze. But one thing I wanted to mention is even though we've got half the so we take all of the vulnerabilities for December and you count up the CVSS score, it's about half what it was, or just under half what it was last month. But the average score in this release is 7.4 out of 10, which is really high. So even though you don't have as many vulnerabilities in this release, you do have a lot of very important ones you need to look at. So don't just take the number and decide that that can wait till January. Probably better to take a look, especially at my top 3. Now, my number 1 selection for today is 2024 49138. This is a Windows Common Log File System Driver Elevation of Privilege Vulnerability. This has been in and out in my top 3 throughout this year. Sometimes it's been at number 1 already. Seems to be coming around quite a lot. It's also known as CLFS driver. Now, this particular vulnerability has been marked by Microsoft as important. CVSS score 7.8. Okay, Rob, why is it important? That's because this vulnerability is both exploited and public aware. This is significant risk. You do need to deploy this. It's exposed on almost every single operating system. So please be aware, this is very, very important. Its attack vector is local, so they do need to have access to your network. Maybe if you've got zero trust and network protection, that's less likely. Maybe there's other mitigations that you can apply. Its attack complexity, however, is low, with low privileges and zero interaction. So in this case, I would still recommend go ahead and deploy this one. My second pick is 2024 49112. This is the Windows Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, or what I call LDAP. Actually, kind of forgot what the actual name of it was until I started reading. This one is super important. Now, Microsoft has rated this as critical CVSS 9.8. It is the highest CVSS rated vulnerability of this release. Its attack vector is network. Network means any network, including the internet. So any kind of internet accessible devices, servers, laptops, desktops, whatever, are able to be attacked with low attack complexity, no privileges, and no user interaction whatsoever. This vulnerability affects LDAP, which is a component used for managing directory services, is very, very important. The unpatched systems could allow remote attackers to execute arbitrary code, resulting in full system compromise, i.e. remote code execution vulnerability equals ransomware. Please make sure that this one is prioritized. The combination of the CVSS score and the potential for remote code execution makes this one of the most dangerous ones of this release. However, it's focused on LDAP. So if you have your devices not with LDAP enabled, potentially they're less likely, less risky. Funny, I thought I heard someone say that you could always turn the devices off to resolve or mitigate the vulnerability. I don't know how you'd operate over the Christmas period with your servers turned off. However, please make sure that you patch this, and then you won't have to. My third choice, very serious, Windows Hyper-V. CVE 2024-49117. This is a remote code execution vulnerability as well. This is severity critical, CVSS score 8.8. Its attack vector is local, so they do have to have access to your network with low attack complexity, low privileges, no user interaction, and scope change. If you remember, I mentioned earlier, that's where you could escape from the technology. Let's talk about this. This vulnerability impacts Hyper-V, its key virtualization platform. I use it. A lot of my colleagues use it for testing things. This vulnerability allows an authenticated attacker operating within a guest VM to send specially crafted file operations to the hardware resources on the VM, and if successful, this could lead to remote code execution on the host server. So what you're doing is, if you can attack one of those guests' VMs, you can literally escape to the host or to another guest. So imagine you've got a Hyper-V server running your domain controller, your SQL server, maybe your CRM system, maybe payroll. You can escape from one of those to another. Super serious. Scope change basically means that that is possible, and therefore it is extremely important. Now, Microsoft is suggesting that this is less likely to occur. However, we've heard Microsoft in the past make mistakes, and therefore we would highly recommend this be prioritized. Now, while this hasn't been weaponized yet, I always see these vulnerabilities with caution. I like to proactively remediate them, even if they're not weaponized or public aware, simply because of the type of impact it can have to your organization. So please make sure you deploy that. Now, one more thing, you might actually be running hypervisor. You might not be aware that hypervisor is used. It's not just a server operating system virtualization platform. You can actually run hypervisor on Windows 10, Windows 11 as well. So some of your IT colleagues might be using Hyper-V in this way to test things or test a new application that you're going to deploy. Don't just look at your servers. Do make sure that you look at your workstations as well. Finally, just to mention, all of the CVE references from my top 3 are here at the top of this list, along with every other CVE that Microsoft has released. Go ahead and take the CVE from this list in priority order. This is done for a reason. Just go and grab that CVE, pop it into your tool set. If this vulnerability is on a large amount of your environment, just go write the exposure percentage next to it. And when you're done, pick 10. And when you're done, you'll be able to know which of the vulnerabilities you're going to prioritize based on the risks of, based on this patch risk profile that we mentioned before. Everything that I am aware of goes into this column, which is called the additional information column, such as things like the jump point, how impactful this can be, and actually what can happen should this particular vulnerability get exposed. In this case, it could gain system privileges, and therefore you might want to prioritize it. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate all the lovely comments and all the wishes. I really appreciate that too. We We are really looking forward to continuing Patch Tuesday in January. And until then, I wish you happy patching. Thank you for joining.